Hello my friends, welcome to my Energy Economist channel. We're gonna talk today about the oil rent and general equilibrium. So stay with me. For those who tend to question the fundamental basis of neoclassical theory, the subject of rent still remains troubling. But what is more troubling is the message of those who stand on the fence, ideally fantasizing as if they can reconcile the differences between neoclassical theory and its classical counterpart by means of methodological compromises that undoubtedly promote nothing other than theoretical confusion. One such example can be seen in the treatment of oil rents by J.M. Chevalier, 1976. Chevalier starts out by defining the oil surplus as the difference between the market price of a ton of crude oil sold to consumers in form of finished products and the total average cost incurred in discovering, producing, transporting, refining, and marketing this ton of crude. At best, dealing with the notion of oil rents within the general equilibrium framework. He doesn't seem to realize that such a treatment tends to destroy the specificity of his rent theory at once. In addition, Chevalier maintains that due to the oligopolistic structure of oil production and the lack of perfect mobility of capital in this industry, one has to distinguish between two types of oil rents: one, differential rents, and two, monopoly rents. Of course, differential rents, so defined, are generated through differences in production techniques and natural qualities, whereas monopoly rents are said to be the result of the differential profit rate of oil relative to other industries. He then devises four different categories for differential oil rents: 1. Quality rent, 2. Position rent, 3. Mining rent, and 4. Technological rent. Finally, when Chevalier comes to evaluate the mechanism of price determination, he admonishes Smith, Ricardo, and Marcus and several other economists for not being able to recognize what he alone has discovered about the relationship of cost and price with respect to rent, in particular on the relationship between cost and price of oil. Here is what Chevalier had to say. None of these economists paid any attention to the determining influence of the cost trend. The price of crude oils tends to be in line with the development cost of the most expensive deposit when costs are increasing, and with the development cost of the least expensive one when costs are decreasing. Chevalier's treatment of rent is not only a mishmash of methodological misunderstanding on the meaning of rent, but also a consequence of a misleading amalgamation of Marshallian cost categories and the classical and Marxian concepts of value and prices of production. First, by abstracting from the phenomenon of property relations in the production of oil, he scarcely realizes that, within the framework of general equilibrium, the causative determination of the least as well as the most expensive oil deposits can't be differentiated from each other. For general equilibrium is a framework of simultaneous determination. Second, aside from the difficulties of a general equilibrium framework, it's not clear why the price of oil should be either in line with the cost of the least or the most productive deposits alone, given the assumption of ascending or descending cost trends respectively, and not somewhere between the two. Besides, basing the price of oil on the lowest cost deposits in priori, one cannot help but wonder about the status of higher cost deposits and the existing differential oil rents both empirically and theoretically. Hence, a troubling ambiguity in the region of differential oil rent at the point of production. Here, the formulation of quality rent, position rent, and mining rent poses a formidable problem from the standpoint of identification of the origin of rent in the production process. The difference of technical rents from the above rents is also unclear. More importantly, however, Chevalier's supposed oil rents cannot possibly assume the status of a social category, for they are collectively devoid of any social or property relations and without any specificity. Hence, the choice here, other than going back to Ricardo, is between Marshall and modern general equilibrium theory. That is why Fine's narrative about the predicament of modern rent matches this occasion. The passage to extinction of rent theory in neoclassical economics has meant that it has lived in the underworld of the profession, like a guilty conscience that is at its strongest when crime is committed, but which fades with the passage of time only to reemerge sporadically and feebly. What is also disturbing is the contagious influence of the neoclassical theory of competition, and likewise its theory of monopoly, on the remaining contemporary schools of economic thought, especially the ones that are seemingly opposed to the mainstream economic orthodoxy. The general equilibrium approaches to the determination of factor incomes place all factors on the same footing, thus treating all factor incomes as rents. The difficulty of this method will be compounded further when allowing for the realization of these rents in conjunction with market structures other than pure competition. As can be seen, Chevalier has failed to develop a specific theory of oil rent even within his own framework. If you want to learn more about the oil rent and general equilibrium, you could do so in my book, Economic Study of Oil and Gas Exploration, which is published on Amazon. Check it out at the link in the description. Please take a second to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget to also hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching and goodbye.